battling it out to secure themselves a spot. Both 5-0-1 right now, so not quite guaranteed, but this win for either player will lock them up for the second day of competition. That's a matchup we've seen. This is our finals matchup repeated. Charizard versus Giratina V-Star. Now, after we watch this finals match, and as we're getting into this match between both players, are there any keys to really watch out that kind of matter in this matchup, or is it maybe going to be a repeat of what we saw so far in the finals?
I mean, I think when we saw the finals between Grant and Azul at the last regional, you saw it's a very back and forth matchup. It can really go either way. There's lots of different defining factors throughout it. Yeah, it's an exciting matchup. You don't really know what's going to happen until you get into the thick of it. So, looking forward to a good one. Hector did say this is his first time on stream, so we'll see if there's any nerves going into this. Grant has played on stream several times at this point, a seasoned regional competitor. Yeah, let's hope for a good one.
So Hector will be starting things off, deciding to go first with this Giratina deck now. And this is one of those matchups, though, where we saw Grant Hayes do this with, if you know what your opponent is playing, sometimes forcing Charizard to go first can actually be at your advantage.
Yeah, there's a lot of matchups where there's still questions of, is it better to go first or second? And yes, there you see the CEO of Qianpao, but today playing Charizard.
Can you even call him the CEO anymore if he just abandons his company to go play a different Pokemon?
Yeah, does that mean he stepped down as the CEO of Qianpao?
Temporary leave of absence, maybe? Come back to the throne one day.
Yeah, but still playing Rare Candy, so...
Okay, well that's like playing Ultra Ball in a deck, right? Like
what?
Okay, it's not the same, but it's like a core card. And look at the meta. There's like 3 different decks that play Rare Candy.
Yeah, 3 out of like 12. Yeah. I know what you're saying though. Yeah, it's a generic card, but I mean, yeah, there's not that many Stage 2 decks in the format. Even Gardevoir. I mean, I guess you play a couple Rare Candy, but all right, here we go.
Let's see how things play out. Now, Grant will be going second in this matchup. Giratina going first. Big key cards, though, are, of course, those Battle VIP Pass. We stress it every match, but your setup really does matter. Not only for the Giratina player, but also for Charizard. Both decks have to sort of set their way up a little bit, and lots of the setup will depend on what cards are in the prize cards. And speaking of Battle VIP Pass, 2 of those in the prize cards, as well as one of those Colress's Experiment. You need to find those early while you build your hand up, but it's also not too bad to have in the prize cards, because if you grab it out, you have access for it too later.
Yeah, overall, nothing too bad. And, you know, Battle VIP Pass, obviously, you want to draw it in your opening hand, but, you know, let's say you draw one in your opening hand, you actually don't mind having 2 in your prize cards, because, you know, you can't use them after the first turn. So.
Here we go. Round 7 action is starting right now. Hector kicking things off. Does start the Comfey. And a great card right off the bat. Spiritomb hitting the bench. Fettered in Misfortune. Will shut off this Rotom V from using Instant Charge. Can even follow this up with a Nest Ball. Found off the Flower Selecting. And another choice for me here. Do you value getting another Comfey down, or do you look to get Giratina into play so that you can start to establish that and maybe Abyss Seeking on the next turn?
Well, looks like Hector is going to favor the Comfey here. Get the additional Flower Selecting. Which I think makes a little bit of sense. There's no rush for you to get a Giratina V down on the first turn in this matchup. You're not threatened at all. You're probably going to attack with Cramorant early on. You know, turn 2, you want to start getting Giratina V down. But yeah, I think just establish cards in your Lost Zone, get yourself set up, get ready for a long game.
It's definitely a long match for sure. Now that Rotom V, which usually is a fine Pokemon to start in the active spot, pretty much rendered useless. But hey, look, in those top 13 cards of the deck, 3 of those Battle VIP Pass, and Grant will be more than happy to see that to start things out. And the Rotom can't use that Instant Charge ability, but still fine to have on your bench because, of course, for Sealstone, a key card to getting that strong turn 2, double Rare Candy, Pidgeot, and Charizard in play, start taking knockouts.
And now, earlier you were talking about what are some of the keys to the matchup. One of the strengths of the Giratina V-Star deck is Path to the Peak. That is one of your ways to fight back against Charizard EX. You know, you rely on Pidgeot EX's Quick Search, you rely on Charizard EX's ability to accelerate energy. So, you know, sometimes we'll see early game Path to the Peak or late game Path to the Peak paired with a hand disruption card like Roxanne, just trying to get your opponent to miss crucial cards at the end of the game. So it really is a back and forth battle. Giratina V-Star is one of the few decks in the format that has an easy way to knock out a Charizard EX in one attack with that Star Requiem. So you always have that at your disposal, but you can only do it once. After that, it becomes much more difficult to knock out a Charizard EX.
And speaking of Charizard EX, the more prize cards you take over on Hector's side, the more you fuel that Burning Darkness attack. So lots of times it's sort of playing around with math to try and damage these Pokemon as much as possible before you go down to 3 or 4 prize cards where your Giratina V-Stars can be knocked out. We will see Arvin played. Does grab the second remaining Battle VIP pass in the deck, plus Forest Seal Stone. And we see an excellent board here. Manaphy Jirachi and all else that you need. And yeah, no instant charge, but besides that, excellent textbook start here for Grant.
Yeah, Jirachi definitely limits the plays from this Lost Zone deck, essentially stopping Sableye from using Lost Mine on your benched Pokemon. Yeah, that makes things more difficult. It feels really bad to have to use 2 of your 5 bench spots on Manaphy and Jirachi. So, you know, Radiant Greninja can hit 2 Pokemon with Moonlight Shuriken. Sableye can hit your bench Pokemon with Lost Mine. And yeah, you have to put down both to block both of those, but it really does cut off a large part of your opponent's strategy.
A really awkward Colress's experiment there. No way to find any of those Giratina V, and drew into 2 Mirage Gate and 3 energy. So Mirage Gate, a card you'd love to have around for later, will have to hit the Lost Zone. This is a big second flower selecting. Does find a switch, and I mean, hitting this Rotom usually is okay. You can finish it off later, but with that Jirachi being play, if this Pokemon hits the bench, yeah, you can finish it off with an attack later on, but you can't do that unless you bring it up into the active again, and it's just going to be a pass, not even valuing retreating this Comfey out of the active, saving the energy on this bench Comfey, and saying, look, I'm going to give you essentially a free turn. I have no Giratina V down. I'm not threatening Lost Impact next turn, and we're just going to see Grant get right to it right away, evolving into this Charizard Infernal Rain, grabbing 3 energy. Grant's already set to take this prize card. Hasn't even played a supporter card yet, so we could see him even go deeper this turn.
Yeah, you can't ask for much more. Turn 2 Rare Candy into a Stage 2, and I mean, there's so many great things about Charizard EX. High HP, low attack cost, and over the course of the game, you know, it just builds up damage even further. But the fact that it also powers itself up just for simply putting it into play makes this card really the complete package. It just asks so little of you to do so much. You just get it in play, powers itself up. It's so hard to knock out. It even gets the minor benefit of the Terra attribute, where it can't be damaged while it's on the bench. People forget about that one a lot.
That's true. I've seen someone Aqua Storm Charizard before, so it does definitely have some practical use. And we see the Forest Seal Stone attached to the Rotom, using Star Alchemy, grabbing Iono, really saying, look, your start is not that strong. I'm just going to kind of push my aggression in this spot, put you to a lower hand size. You don't have Giratina V in that hand, but yeah, I'd rather just put you on lower hand size now. Grant really looking to try and establish Pidgeot, does have it in hand, and there is an Ultra Ball. Could see potentially Charmeleon get grabbed, evolve that up. I mean, Rare Candy's an important resource. Anytime you can sort of shortcut that, leave more in deck, and give yourself more options, later on, it's going to be your friend for sure.
Yep. No Pidgeotto in this list. I think probably not very common these days. But yeah, unable to get that. Only way you can get Pidgeot EX into play is with the Rare Candy. And interesting, we see Ultra Ball away a switch. You know, we don't see switching cards too frequently in this deck, probably paying some respect to some of the Tapu Koko EX, some of the special conditions, and a little bit to the control decks as well, giving yourself a way to switch out.
So it's on Hector now. Grant has taken the prize card, set the stage, said, hey, look, I've got Charizard powered up. I'm ready to get things kicking. And we'll see Nest Ball played to start the turn off. So we'll grab this Giratina V, put it onto the bench. But with no Radiant Greninja in play, only 1 Comfey, and a hand that doesn't really have something like Colress in it, this might be a big flower selecting to see how Hector can play this turn off. does find Path to the Peak, and that's a great card to slow things down, but how much is it slowing things down when your opponent's got that Charizard already powered up? Yes, you shut off Quick Search, but you're going to need something in combination with that Path to get yourself back on track.
Yeah, the good news for Hector is that Grant has not set up Pidgeot EX yet and doesn't have that strong of a board. Yes, there's an attacker, but until Pidgeot EX comes out, you know, a lot can happen here. And there you do see the Path to the Peak plus the INO. Going to disrupt the hand and hope that Path to the Peak sticks in there. You do see the Cramorant coming out, so I'm just going to settle for maybe that 2-hit knockout, setting up the first one with the Spit Innocently, and then use Giratina's first attack for the knockout, saving your Star Requiem for later. It's not ideally how you'd want to do it, but in this situation, it works. You just got to kind of hope that your opponent misses at some point. They did clog their bench up with a lot of stuff, so over time they may be vulnerable to repeated hand disruption, things like that. Yeah, it's still anybody's game.
Hector deciding to use this Mirage Gate early, just getting those energy out of the deck, understands Iona could come up at any time, and like you said, Spit Innocently, 110 damage on this Charizard, putting it in range for a Lost Impact the following turn. And this is going to be pretty big here for Grant.
Another one.
What do we see? And a huge 3 cards there. Charizard EX the following turn. Boss's orders to bring up this Giratina. And what now was a nice setup play, no matter how many prizes Hector takes next turn, would not have been in range for this Giratina V-Star to get knocked out. So by hitting it for 180 damage, you're putting it in range to be knocked out the following turn. And these are going to be big 5 cards, too. Not only are you hitting this Giratina, but there's nothing like Comfey in play to flower selecting for. So we'll see what these 5 cards warrant. Pretty easy choice there, getting rid of Manaphy and Battle VIP Pass. But do we see a Giratina V-Star?
That's the big thing you're looking for here, and I don't see one yet. This could be a good position for Hector. Grant really didn't do a whole lot on that last turn. Only has 3 cards in hand. If you are able to get a Giratina V-Star this turn, it's a good opportunity to kind of put some aggression back on your opponent, but looks like we're just going to see a retreat. Wow, that can't feel very good. Oh, I'm going to counter catcher, bring up the other Charizard EX and try to soften up both of them. All right.
It's a pretty interesting line. And normally you do have that one guaranteed knockout. So, looking at this play, and obviously things didn't go well for Hector. This is not his ideal line, but how do you feel about this sort of detour that Hector has done in his strategy?
Yeah, I think it's totally reasonable. You're basically setting up the same thing. Now you're going to have another fresh Giratina. Hopefully that turns into the V-Star on the next turn. But, yeah, you basically just kind of delayed what was happening before. And also, it's not guaranteed the Grant has an energy. Obviously does here, but there was a chance that he just didn't have one and couldn't attack this turn.
Not much else going on in the hand, though.
Yeah, exactly.
And, that's not too bad for Hector. Now you've got both these softened up. Also got that second Giratina V on the bench. And this one, yeah, if you take 2 prize cards, you're not in range for a Burning Darkness to take a 1-hit knockout, but there is not much going on in this hand. Still no V-Star, no supporter card. Can't play something like a Roxanne. Grant yet to take 3 prize cards. Can't even use that Radiant Greninja's concealed card because of the Path to the Peak.
There's some supporter there.
It is a Roxanne, but that's not what you're looking for in this spot.
Yeah, can't use that one right now.
Nope. Maybe next turn, but the question here, Kyle, is next turn too late? We are going to at least see 1 more flower selecting. Now, this is a pretty important choice for Grant. What Pokemon do you bring up into this active spot? Now, there's not a lot going on in this hand, so what is your best choice to keep yourself in a good spot? And, wow, this is going to be the Pidgey.
Yep, just saying all these other things are too important. Don't want to give up 2 prize cards with the Rotom V. Sure, I'm nowhere near getting a Pidgeot EX out. You can take the Pidgey.
And that's just going to be an attachment and a pass back over to Grant.
Well, never mind. There's a rare candy.
And while you can't use Quick Search, this is still plenty fine. Evolve into this Pidgeot EX, and because of that evolution, Pidgeot EX having 0 retreat cost means that Grant's going to be able to just take another prize card this turn, and it begs the question for Hector, is this just too late to be able to come back at this point when Grant is just essentially 2 knockouts away from winning this game.
I think it's still possible. There's been no counter for the path to the peak. Both those Charizard EX are vulnerable. Obviously, it's going to be a tough road ahead, but the game's not quite over. But you do see one of the weaknesses of the Giratina V-Star deck here. You know, you do not typically... Oh, well, I just drew one finally. You do not typically play Ultra Ball in this deck. And if you do, maybe it's like 1, just because it's too costly to discard cards with it. But it means you have no real way to search for your Giratina V-Star besides just drawing into it. Sometimes you just don't find it. You don't have that many outs to get to it. But now we're going to see Hector start to put up some offense. Like, there's a question of whether to play the Roxanne here, but your opponent has shown nothing so far. So, hey, make them prove that they have something.
And gives you a little bit of guaranteed dig next turn. It essentially just acts as a draw 6.
Got bad news. He drew something.
And that's a good something for sure. Professor's Research off of the top, it seems. Or I think actually drew that out of the prize card. So a great grab there for Grant.
The good news, though, for Hector is that there's no boss's orders being played this turn. So Grant, I don't believe, can knock out this active Giratina V-Star this turn, which means, you know, the prize race is still pretty much in Hector's favor. He can just keep getting 2 prize knockouts. And Grant won't be able to get a prize card this turn. So despite, you know, pretty slow start from Hector, you know, a great one from Grant, things are still not decided here in this game. And in fact, maybe advantage Hector at this point.
Things have turned around excellently here for Hector so far. And Grant did draw into that Lost Vacuum, but the choice here is, what do you value grabbing off of Quick Search? Would you rather leave that card later on if your opponent's just going to most likely Roxanne path you? We'll see Super Rod get played first. That is a crucial inclusion in this deck, is playing 2 copies of that because there's only 6 fire energy. So getting those back will allow Rare Candy Charizard, plus, of course, a counter to that path to the peak to allow this 3rd Charizard EX to attack. Talk about prize trade. I mean, that's something that is in my mind right now. If this 2nd Charizard goes down, can you even get that 3rd Pokemon in play to deal damage and take some prize cards on this active Giratina V-Star?
Yeah, it's still anybody's game here. If you're Grant, just keep attacking and hope things work out. You could potentially retreat, set up a single prize Pokemon this turn, and force your opponent to have, you know, like a counter catcher, a boss's orders here. But it looks like not going to risk it.
It's so tough because if they have that, you've just pretty much wasted a turn at that point. And from there, just one more lost impact will take the game. You could also Star Requiem, build the board up. You could also leave Star Requiem open as an option for both of these Pokemon. And it will just be another Burning Darkness, 240 damage onto this Giratina. Hector's got a pretty sizable hand. Energy's in the discard pile. Is looking at potentially a Super Rod to bring some of these energy cards back. Could be paired with a Mirage Gate, which we see in hand. And now all of a sudden, with this 3rd Giratina coming into play, you ignore that damaged bench Giratina and set up to essentially use 3 Giratina. We don't see it a lot, but bouncing back and forth when your ability locking your opponent with Path to the Peak is a very solid strategy, working out excellently here for Hector in Game 1.
Yeah, I think the only awkward part here is you need to use Lost Impact here. You cannot waste your Star Requiem here, which means you're going to have to get a lot of energy in play just to be safe to lock up the game for the next turn. So another Mirage Gate, perfect. Get 2 extra energy into play, but you'd really love to leave yourself in a position where, you know, you have the energy in play already and you just need to use Star Requiem to win the game. Or, you know, leave yourself with just needing 1 energy attachment to win. Because, yeah, if you use your V-Star power attack here and, you know, your opponent gets another Charizard EX out, that means you also need to find, like, boss's orders to knock out Pidgeot EX to win. So it's really about trying to manage, you know, what gives you the best chance to lock up the game for the next turn.
Hector does still have 2 Jet Energy. That's a card I have my eye on here. If Hector can find those, not necessarily to pivot out, but just to fulfill that cost, does still have 1 basic Psychic Energy in the deck. And if you can get rid of the Psychic Energy on this active Pokemon and that Jet Energy you attach, you leave essentially both Pokemon in range that without a Mirage Gate, you can Star Requiem whatever 2-prize Pokemon comes out. Now, let's see these 6 cards, but no.
There's no energy at all.
Any energy. And
okay, he's just going to go for it.
wow.
I mean, you do put your opponent at 2 cards with the Roxanne, and there's a Path to the Peak in play. I mean, what are the odds that your opponent does something big this turn? Probably pretty low. But, yeah, you don't feel good about it.
And the problem here is with that Path to the Peak, this Arven can't grab all the pieces, the Rare Candy Charizard and the Counter Stadium. You can grab something like the, oh wow, just going to play the Iono instead. Just saying, look, I've got to find 3 pretty insane cards here to keep myself in this game. Do we see maybe a Lost Vacuum? No, but did evolve into Charmeleon on that turn, so there's no ability to attack. Having to potentially retreat this Pokemon, but then that begs the question, do you have enough energy cards to pivot this Pokemon out? I mean, Hector's in no position to really want to take knockouts on either of these 1-prize support Pokemon like Manaphy or Jirachi.
Yeah, Grant also drew the Lost City, so can get rid of the Path to the Peak, but may just be trying to figure out, is it worth doing this turn? Decides, yes, I want to go search for a card this turn. And looks like Charmander was the choice.
It's so tough. We will see Level Ball get played. Now, usually it's just better to grab the Pokemon itself, but Grant understands that both cards are technically not live outs to what he wants, so essentially using it as a thin, finding the Charmander off of the Level Ball. I mean, the question still comes that at this point, Hector is just 1 2-prize knockout away or 2 1-prize knockouts away. Grant still has to knock out 2 of these Pokemon. So we'll just be benching this Charmander, retreating, passing the turn over. If Hector can find that boss's orders, we do now see all those energies that weren't drawn being put into the hand due to that Iono. Do we see boss's orders? Another Roxanne. That's still a really solid card to find. The question now comes is Hector's put himself in a little bit of an awkward position here, though. The board is benched, or the bench is essentially locked out here. And Giratina is extremely strong, but one of the hardest parts about this deck is Lost impacting these small Pokemon. It's such a heavy price to pay, and with Hector being a little low on resources here, I think it's just debating, do I just try and draw cards this turn? Do I try and attack? And this Jet Energy on this Comfey pretty much signals that Hector's in no rush to do anything this turn. Just going to go ahead, attach the Jet Energy, Roxanne, and try and find that 1 copy or those 2 copies of Boss's Orders still in the deck to close this game out.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're on Hector's side, you're in no rush to take a 1-prize knockout. There's no reason to do that. First of all, it would be really bad because you'd have to Lost Zone 2 of your energy. That's just not a winning strategy at this point. Also, it really doesn't advance you winning by very much. So you have no reason to be the aggressor here. Just sit back, try to sculpt your hand to try to find a way to get boss's orders or whatever you need to win the game on the next turn, and say, okay, you got to beat me. Good luck.
Great cards there found. The Giratina V-Star and the boss's orders to the following turn. And what does Grant have?
Lost Vacuum, that's pretty good.
Lost Vacuum and Charizard EX.
But also the counter catcher that he's going to have to throw away if he wants to do this.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of got to be your only strategy in this position if you're going to make this play. And I mean, how many Fire Energy are in the deck, though? Are there 3 Fire Energy? No, I think there's just 2 Fire Energy. If there was,
that's all you need.
But if there was 1 more in the deck, you could just evolve this Charizard, find the second counter catcher out, and then because Hector already used Star Requiem, it would force him to have the boss's orders at this point. I mean, I guess that's the same thing both ways, but
one of the benefits for Grant in this situation is he actually is happy to take a 1-prize knockout. Then Hector can't play counter catcher to get the last 2 prizes to win. So, I mean, yeah, all you can do at this point, get your Charizard out, take a knockout, and then say, okay, do you have boss? And yeah, he does. All right, so.
Showing it, saving some time. That was so back and forth, right?
Yeah, and yeah, it's tough to explain everything that's going on in this matchup. There's so many moving pieces. But yeah, at the end of the day, Hector is able to close it out with the boss's orders. But you can see how difficult it is to actually set up winning positions in this matchup. It's very difficult to set up a spot where you are, like checkmating your opponent. There's so many different things that can go wrong. But both players navigating it best they can. And at the end, Hector's just the one who found the boss's orders to win. Great game.
Yeah, a great game. Grant was sort of just at the mercy of whatever Iono or Roxanne Hector had to throw, and Hector was at the mercy of his own flower selectings in Chorus, and that's what it comes down to in this matchup. But, I mean, that sort of showed both the plus and negatives of both this deck. I mean, our first round that we featured, round 4, we saw a lot of those downsides of Giratina, the missing V-stars, and we still saw that in Hector for round number 1, right? Got off to a little bit of a slower start, didn't get those Giratina's Vs down right away, but still applied pressure to the Charizard, was able to get these Giratina Vs down, sort of dance around this Charizard a little bit. Path to Peak, though, the main card, it's slowing down Quick Search, which, if Grant had access to that, this would have been a completely different game.
Yeah, the Spiritomb was also a really big deal, stopping the Rotom V from using its ability at certain points in the game was a difference maker. I think that is a card you would probably go for anyway when you see you're playing against Charizard, but when your opponent starts with the Rotom V, it makes it a very easy decision for you to go straight for the Spiritomb. I think that ended up disrupting Grant just enough through the course of the game that it led to Hector squeaking out a win there.
Manaphy and the prizes, as well as that Lumineon, both cards that are very valuable in their own right. You see that Chorus and Giratina at the top. We've seen how crucial it is to have all of those Giratinas in your hand. Just scoops up the game, is just going to concede after that start. Are you kidding me?
All right.
It was that bad.
Thrilling game. We're going to game 3.
We're going to game 3, Kyle. Let's go.
Literal easiest win Grant will ever get in his life. Didn't have to do a single thing.
Just started Rotom again, and look, it was so intimidating that Hector was scared. He's like, he saw a
Cramorant
ghost.
is weak to lightning.
That's true. Hey, listen, don't put some disrespect on my man Rotom V-Star, You never know what you're going to see here.
I do respect that play from Hector, playing for wins, not for ties. You could draw that out for a while, let Grant play his turn out, see if you draw something on the next turn. Hopefully you crawl back in the game. He just said, nope, let's move on to the next one. I want to play a real game.
So this is what I got, and I know it's not good enough. Picked up the cards. We're going to game 2. An interesting thing, though, I mean, if you're in Hector's shoes, you now know the matchup well. Do you elect to go second at this point, or do you sort of just do your thing, get your flower selectings going, and don't really care about what Grant's trying to do in this position early game?
Yeah, we do know that Hector has decided to go second, so Grant will go first. I think that makes some sense. This build relies a lot on Arven to find those early battle VIP passes. So, yeah, you just force your opponent to start with a battle VIP pass in hand. If they don't, they might get off to a rough start. Gives you an advantage. You can attack on the first turn with Cramorant potentially, or even just Abyss Seeking, whatever you need to do. So yeah, I think that does make sense. Conventional wisdom would say you don't want the evolution deck to go first, because when they go first, then turn 2 they can evolve. But there are some situations where it does make sense to make them go first because they can't play a supporter card.
It's sort of all about understanding what is realistic, right? This Charizard deck, in theory, yes, it can hit turn 2, Rare Candy Pidgeot, Rare Candy Charizard, and yeah, letting them go first, not great, right? They're gonna get an extra turn on you in terms of what you can do and what you're allowed to do on your first turn. But that doesn't happen all the time. And you see these prize cards have anything else to do. 2 Arven in the prize cards. I mean, it's still a crucial card. Of course, not as much if you're going first, but see how things go. Grant will be starting things off, and that is the best way you can start your turn off. Does find one of those battle VIP pass.
Yep.
Oh, it opens the Spiritomb as well on Hector's side. Wow, that's...
Hector is saying my boy Tomb is coming through. So blocking the Rotom V once again. Could make things awkward for Grant here in game number 3, but battle VIP pass, you hate to see it if you're Hector. You gamble a little bit, saying, I'm going to make you go first. Maybe you won't draw anything good. You get off to a rough start. But when you let your opponent go first and they play battle VIP pass, it doesn't feel great.
Not at all. It's part of that risk. It's part of that variance, and not paying off so far for Hector. I don't know what else is going on in this hand for Grant. Does have some things to work with for the following turn. That is always sort of risky, playing in the first position up against these Lost Zone decks. Now, we don't see it a lot, but these decks are capable of hitting that turn one, spit innocently on Cramorant, and while it's not great to take prizes early, sometimes it's worth that trade-off if you're, again, sort of pushing your aggression and trying to capitalize on potentially a slow start from your opponent.
Yeah, we do see some friendly banter here at the table with these players chatting back and forth. And Hector, wow, that was actually a pretty good top deck. His hand was pretty bad. He's got an Iono. We're certainly not going to see a Cramorant attack with this kind of start. He's not going to play Colress's Experiment, but hey, this worked out pretty well. He's going to be able to go with the Abyss Seeking, but yeah, that hand was almost a disaster.
We'll end the turn with just 2 cards in the hand, or 2 cards in the Lost Zone, rather. But this is a very solid start. Who needs Battle VIP Pass, Kyle? Just finding 3 perfect Pokemon to put into play and ending the turn off with Abyss Seeking. We'll have a little bit of a tougher choice here now. I think Hector kind of realizing hasn't seen the deck yet. And this is one of the sort of the disadvantages of not doing a deck search on your first turn. Hector not aware that one of those Giratina V-Star are prized, and that is a painful 2 cards hitting the Lost Zone, especially with one of those Giratina V-Star in the prizes.
That's crazy.
Oh, wait, never mind. This is a different game. Never mind. Giratina V-Star isn't in the prize cards of this game. So
yeah.
Regardless, though, Radiant Greninja, now for Grant, you don't even need to put the Manaphy down into play.
Exactly, yeah. It frees up a bench spot for you for the whole game. The bad news for Grant, he can't do anything. Path to the Peak really shut him down. And also, he started with the wrong Charmander. You know, if you start with the other one, you can use the Blazing Destruction and discard the Path to the Peak. But instead, can only do 30 damage, which I think you would prefer to discard a Path to the Peak here. So the, turn 1 Path to the Peak might be paying dividends for Hector here.
30 damage isn't terrible, though, because if there's no switch card and you evolve this up, it does mean that it's technically 1 less prize card you need, and now that is a great flower selecting. Finds Colress's Experiment, see more cards into the Lost Zone. This is a little bit tough. I think the easy choice is Cram's definitely going to go away, but I feel like you've got to lock in. Yeah, you've got to lock in the Giratina V-Star and the Colress. So last one's just which energy do you prefer? Is playing more Psychic Energy, so that will be the one that goes into the Lost Zone, and just going to go and start attacking, sort of pouncing on Blood in the Water, sees that nothing's going on for Grant, and while you usually want to wait for Charizard to evolve, then take hits, we're just going to see Cramorant move around, spit innocently, and Hector first want to take prize cards here.
Stadium top deck for Grant.
Yeah, I think already had Lost Vacuum in hand. It is the
Artisan will not. We can see a call for family from Pidgey. You can see something really awkward here where you call for family for like Pokemon V, so then you can use the Forest Sealstone. Yeah, this is a rough one for Grant.
Yeah, even just going to play the Artisan, I think you kind of want to have 3 Pokemon down. You want to get the second Charmander down. You want another Pidgey because this one might just get knocked out. And then you also want the Rotom to use the Forest Sealstone. So just going to use all these powers at once.
An old call for family.
Whole squad is here. 3 Pokemon coming down. 1 off the Artisan and 2 off of this call for family. And Hector in a position where Giratina V is evolved up into a V-Star. Another prize card can be taken. But it really is just going to come down to these next couple of turns for Grant. That does have that Forest Sealstone in hand. We'll need to combine that with a few other cards to be able to come back. But, I mean, if this match has told us anything, Kyle, slow starts, not doing a lot, that's nowhere to say that that person is out of this match, so to say.
Yep. Do you see Hector's Lost Zone expanding? Okay, finally moving out of the middle of the battlefield here. Yeah, getting more cards on Lost Zone. We're up to 7 at this point, so Mirage Gate is unlocked. Start to accelerate some energy into play. You have to think Hector is advantaged here. Gonna go ahead 2 prize cards, fully powered Giratina V-Star, ready to roll. We'll see if Grant can do anything about it. There's another Path to the Peak in hand for Hector as well if he would like to go for it. And he does.
Will spit innocently, another prize taken. And this is a big turn for Grant here. Can he find a way to apply some pressure to these bench Giratinas? Does find another rare candy and has that Lost Vacuum from before. So I think the cards are here to at least get this Rare Candy Pidgeot, Rare Candy Charizard out, but I mean, yeah, you're taking this one prize knockout, but you're staring down 7 cards in the Lost Zone, a Giratina V-Star on the bench. But, I mean, what else can you really do in this spot? It will be the Pidgeot grabbed first off of the Forest Seal Stone.
Yeah, now what do you get here? Looks like he's just going to get Charizard EX and say, all right, good luck. I hope this makes it through the turn. But, yeah, I mean, you could have gone for a riskier route, grab like an Iono and just hope you get into Rare Candy Charizard. Your odds probably aren't very high of that, though. So Grant just going to say, all my cards are on the table here. If you can deal with this, I'm probably going to lose. But I got to take my chance where I can.
So an all-in play here from Grant. Pidgeot, quick search, Charizard EX online. It has a 0-card hand to end the turn. We'll take 1 prize card to finish things off. Now, there is a couple Fire Energy in the discard pile, and that is pretty awkward, but can't help it if that's how it is. We also saw the Path to Peak hit the Lost Zone, and that's going to be 1 more card for Hector, so doesn't even necessarily need to play Colress this turn, can just double Flower Selecting. That's sort of a tough choice there, though. Does have the Mirage Gate and the Super Rod.
That's tough. There's 1 Mirage Gate in the Lost Zone already and 1 played.
But there's the Jet Energy. That's exactly what Hector wants to see. Flower Selecting will bring him up to 10 cards in the Lost Zone and can even add some cherries on top by playing this final Path to the Peak in play, shutting off Quick Search, putting Grant at just 1 card with no way to find any pieces, and saying, look, I'm putting all my cards on the table at this point. I'm knocking out your only threat. How do you respond to this?
Yep, and Jet Energy, an important inclusion in these Giratina V-Star decks. Longtime players might remember Warp Energy. It's kind of the inverse of that. Warp Energy used to be attached to your active, and then you get to switch. Jet Energy is attached to a benched Pokemon, and then you can switch that into the active spot. Works beautifully with that Comfey, but yeah, there is the Path to the Peak. 10 cards in the Lost Zone. We'll see Star Requiem, and Hector going down to 2 prize cards. Does not have another Giratina V-Star ready to go, but Grant has 1 card in hand. There's a Path to the Peak in play. What can he even draw?
Not much. Charizard and Vitality Band. And, I mean, what, you just retreat into Jirachi and pass, and there's the boss's orders, closing the game out. A swift game 3 for Hector, going to 6-0-1, locking up a spot in day 2, taking down Charizard. Giratina getting its revenge here at Portland.
Yeah, and games like that are why you look at the Giratina V-Star deck and go, wow, this deck's great.
That's like what we saw with Roaring Moon earlier, right? Like, yeah, this deck's broken. Look at what it just did. He knocked out his Pokemon in 1 attack.
Yeah.
He played Path. He disrupted his hand. I mean, that's the power of Giratina at its highs.
Yeah, so congratulations to Hector. We'll be making it into day 2 here at the Portland Regional Championships with some solid play there with the Giratina V-Star deck. Yeah, you see the decision to just immediately concede game 2 pays off. He gets to finish the match, gets 3 match points for the win. Now he's moving on.
Great way to start things off. Great way to sort of get yourself through day 1. Now you've locked yourself up a spot for day 2, and still plenty more Pokemon to play. I mean, when you're in that position, right, it's just sort of like a relief off your shoulders. You've still got plenty more Pokemon to play, and you're well aware of that, right? You've still got 8 Swiss rounds left to go, but you now know that, look, I can, once day finishes, I know I'm in day 2, I play more Pokemon tomorrow. Now let me set my eyes on that top 8, that championship trophy, and all that comes with having success in the Pokemon TCG.
And I saw Hector at one point during the match say, yeah, Spiritomb and Path to the Peak, very skilled Pokemon there. It worked out for him. Sometimes just cutting off your opponent's options is all you need to win the game. Spiritomb, kind of the unsung hero of that match, preventing any usage of that Rotom V throughout the entirety of games 1 and 3. So, yeah. Spiritomb, I think, mostly a tech card for, Mew VMAX, but also has uses against these kinds of decks that rely on Lumineon V, Rotom V, things like that. That fettered in Misfortune's ability, paying off big time.
paying off with a ticket to day 2. Now, Grant's not out of it either.
Oh, yeah.
Played very well. I mean, this is what the matchup sort of comes down to, right? Is you have access to get out of Path to the Peak every turn, then things can go your way. But when Path sticks, when your options are a little bit limited, it's tough. It really is.
Yeah, if you're Grant, I mean, you just shake it off. Not much you can do there. Things just didn't fall your way. That's how it goes sometimes. You hope to not get locked by Path to the Peak in the future rounds. But if you're Hector, that's exactly how you want things to go. Mostly stress-free Game 3. You know, Game 1 was pretty close, back and forth. But yeah, love to cruise to a victory, and hopefully he can keep the momentum rolling and pick up a few more wins before this first day is over.